crafted gear, this is not a small profession thing. This is almost like Valor points in that it will offer a deterministic form of gearing. So this is important for all of us. And we have some good details here. Before we get into the exciting stuff that is highlighted, first we need to cover the basics. So every bit of major crafted gear, which just says to me core slots, requires a thing called a spark of ingenuity. And these are earned over time throughout the expansion. You get 1 spark from the intro quest at launch after locking the Engine of Innovation. You get a second one from a quest when Season 1 starts, and all subsequent ones are earned around every 2 weeks after that, until players have a total of 5. At that point, you get an item called an Essence Detector, and that will allow you to get further sparks of ingenuity from virtually any activity, which kind of reminds me, of like the Legion Legendary drops.
Yeah.
These are supposed to be rare things one every few weeks. But you will get up to 5 in a very predictable fashion. So that's how you actually like make these bits of gear. However, upgrading the item level of crafted gear to heroic raid or mythic raid quality, that requires primal infusions. These are made by combining primal chaos and varying levels of primal focus. Chaos and focus, these are like our, I guess, 2 of the resources. So primal focus drops from heroic bosses, keys that are 11 and beyond, and PvP boxes. There is then concentrated primal focus, which drops from mythic bosses, even higher keys, and PvP boxes. And then each renown track has 4 major factions, each renown track from the 4 major factions will give a primal infusion, as well as the first defeat of Razageth on any difficulty.
Nice.
So this will basically allow for solo and casual players to actually get a limited amount of heroic level crafted gear from doing those renowns, but in a way that really doesn't seem like it's going to be competing with the progress of, the dungeon raid, etc. players. I think that's good and healthy. I think that having a strong, like legitimately powerful carrot for people who just want to do those reps, I think that that's a really good thing. For some of those players, it might even make them feel a bit more comfortable to hop into a dungeon or to try something else. And, it's obviously going to be slower than if you're just directly getting that gear yourself. So if that is by doing that harder content. So if that's the case, like as a heroic raider, I don't feel threatened by that or, worried about that.
Yeah.
I think that strong world content rewards that players feel like they can actually go and target, which is definitely a criticism I would have of past systems. I think that that's very strong. And the final little point here is that the crafted gear can't be converted into tier using the inspiration catalyst. I could see how that could be disappointing to people, but I think ultimately it's also kind of understandable that they don't just want the 100% chance of tier. And it's also that if this stuff could be used for tier, that's all people would use it for, and then the feature would basically be totally destroyed and just turned into the tier generator. Whereas to get tier, I think they want that to be directly correlated with playing dungeon raid in PvP.
Yeah, I think it's
that makes total sense to me.
Yeah, largely giving people limited amounts of better gear. Well, I think just give people gear all day long to an extent, but as long as it's limited, because we also know the crafted, you can only wear 5 pieces and weapons take 2 slots. I think something along those lines. It's been a while since I've actually read up on that, but fundamentally it is the idea of so you can get hero crafted gears as a foot in the door to kind of help you. And it's always good to have from a reward perspective, you want to give people the foot in the door, the first step on the path, and they take the first step and go, that step felt nice. Oh, hang on, this crafted gear is that color. I like that color. I would like to have the full set in that color. How do I? Well, I've not done any raiding in a long time, but I might as well give it a try. That's the ideal outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And it's theoretically completely perfectly fine there. As long as the crafted gear doesn't end up. And I think they've been appropriately defensive and appropriately limited on how they've implemented it, so it's not going to be, you need to spend a load of money and grind a load to get to play the game. I think it's just going to be, hey, this will be a great way to speed up your gearing if you've been falling behind.
Yeah,
that's the intent, and I assume they're intelligent enough to look at that and go, well, how do we need to pace that then, like this? Because it's there's a lot of the problems of gearing come from philosophical differences, not from execution failures, I think, in terms of how fast they want people to gear. And in this case, they have the right philosophy of we want people to have this as some backup gearing. So I trust them in the execution of that.
Yeah. Just to finish off on the topic of professions then, so the profession specializations cannot be respec'd. So that is how, if you're like a blacksmith, you could be specializing into, armor crafting, weapon crafting, one-handed crafting. Because if you could respec those, then you just respec them all the time to most optimally make something. Yeah. So it loses all identity if you can respec, but of course, over time, you'll be able to fully max them out. Yeah. Then for crafting orders, those will be expanded in the future to include old world and expansion recipes, but no ETA in that. And then the crafting orders are purposefully limited so that you can't just have a small handful of people no-lifing it, running the whole market. And I suppose as well that if they have a situation where crafting orders are completely unthrottled, they're a unlimited resource that a crafter has. They can just, fulfill orders or whatever, just do that, to the tits. Then you'd have a thing where actually the value of the crafter doing the thing would be down to the point where you'd have a race to the bottom in terms of commission because people would just care about the skill points because they just want to get skill points and have somebody else pay for it. So if they actually make there be a limited supply of that, then that does actually help with the economy working, right? Yeah, and of course, it's because it's a market, it's a self-balancing thing. So if these, if those feel too expensive, then that will incentivize people to take up crafting so that they can earn some of that money, which will, of course, increase the supply of crafters to meet that demand, and make those prices go down.
And that theoretically is where the limitation on specialization respecing early in the expansion will help.
Yeah.
Because if someone goes, oh, well, I am specced into this, I can do this. Oh, I can't do the other thing. Oh, that means someone else has to do the other thing. Or I want the other thing. I can't do it for myself yet. Do I go and try to farm it out? Do I try and, make that happen? Or do I get my crafter friend who's also crafting to do that? And it'll be a rubber hitting the road kind of thing for how successful this is. But theoretically, they have a lot of it kind of down right, ideally. And one thing I wanted to say is there's interesting quests in Valdragon, the city hub, around this, and it's really funny. I actually enjoyed it. But there's the crafter people who you follow the whole expansion. They they basically teach you the ropes of how all this stuff works. When you get to Valdraken, there's this quest. I don't know if it's a chain, but I only did the first part of it. But you basically go around to different people extolling the virtues of doing crafting orders and having a favorite crafter. So you try to explain to someone, oh hey, get this guy to do your orders for you, and you've a load of dialogue options for how to try to navigate the conversation. And I thought it was fun to do, even it was kind of a little bit just fluff in a way. But it was fun. But I could see it was Blizzard going, these crafting orders have a purpose, by the way, and we're going to well, what's it? Some cliche thing about how the best way to learn something is to teach it. So you're trying to teach this NPC all of the virtues of being a good crafter and setting up crafting orders and going to one person repeatedly, and they'll how that individual crafter can excel in certain ways. And you go through this dialogue of this person, you're like, oh yeah, I guess theoretically that is how these crafting orders are supposed to work. Hopefully they do. And you're they're really committed to doing it. And you're it's fun. It's fun. It's fun and it's integrated in the world, I should say, which is very different to this is a gameplay system that no one gives a shit about. It's all very well integrated, which will mean people will understand it and enjoy it more, or fucking absolutely hit the nail on the head, pending balancing and execution because markets are funny. Yeah. Markets are fun.